Those in opposition to Donald Trump have gotten their groove back, and this week shows it. It's not just on Tuesday night, the shellacking, the wipeout for the Republican Party that happened. It's not just that. It's 9 different court orders and judgments and verdicts against the Trump administration all this week. It's the polling numbers. It is the opponents of Donald Trump turning his economic playbook against him. Things have changed in a year. Donald Trump didn't get the memo. He's walking around clueless and out of touch. He has a Biden problem, and I'll talk about it. That was demonstrated on election night. As whether you're progressive Democrats or you are moderate Democrats, you won and won big on Tuesday night. And it's because you're focused on kitchen table politics. You're focused on the people. You're focused on the people's checkbooks and pocketbooks and purses and grocery wagons. Every day that the shutdown continues, it is on a weekly basis, $15 billion hit to our economy every week that the government stays shut. And now that has provided the stark contrast we've needed as opponents of Donald Trump to show that he doesn't care about the middle class. He doesn't care about on the divide between rich and poor. He cares only about the rich, because the poor are suffering as he trolls 42 million people who are below the poverty line in his economy and denies them full anti-hunger payments, SNAP payments, which we're going to talk about tonight. The shutdown, which has impacted everyone's health care. It has impacted airline travel. It has impacted government entitlement payments to people on the social safety net that need it. Never has there been a starker contrast between the haves and the have-nots, between the Democratic ideals and the Republican MAGA depraved policies and principles. As Donald Trump fiddles as the American economy and the middle class and the poor burn, as he parties it up in Mar-a-Lago. He's not even in Washington right now to negotiate, to reopen the government. He's at Mar-a-Lago playing golf, spending hundreds of millions of dollars on his golf game with taxpayer expenses instead of doing the hard work of governing and leading from the front. He's not even leading from behind. That suggests he's even in the line. He has abdicated his responsibility. He's busy raising money in Miami this week. Think about this week. He lost 9 times in court. I'm going to go over every one of them with you here on Legal AF on the weekend. 9 losses. He's going to lose likely at the United States Supreme Court on tariffs, his signature framework for his entire administration. And what's he doing? He's hosting fat cats in Miami, including Jeff Bezos, including Serena Williams, and others who are partying it up in Miami and then sleeping in a bed at Mar-a-Lago with golden thread sheets and high thread count and a great Gatsby party and gold fixtures, while everyday Americans can't make ends meet. And they have noticed 72% of Americans believe the economy is bad, that it's not the golden era of the economy that Donald Trump keeps talking about. It's not the golden era of cryptocurrency. They don't care what the stock market is doing. They care what the supermarket is doing. It's not Wall Street. It's always been Main Street, which is the party of Main Street right now. That stark contrast has been presented to us as the shutdown shows how many millions of Americans can't afford health care without government subsidy, watching their premiums double and triple. They couldn't afford them, barely afford them before. How are they going to afford 3 times the amount? As air travel grounds to a halt. By November the 14th, 10% more of air travel will be grounded. 20% 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that, if the shutdown continues. And what does Donald Trump care? He's busy partying. The poll numbers tell him that he's on the wrong side of the issue. 52% of Americans blame Donald Trump. That's 10 points more than the Democrats for the shutdown. And we're going to cover that. And then show what's happening in the courts, the crowds, the courts, the courage. That is the takeaway from Tuesday night in America on election night. And I'll filter it through all the court at the intersection of law and politics, all of the court results this week, which was an epic string of losses for the Trump administration. From sea to shining sea. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the Midas Touch Network. This is Legal AF, the podcast. I'm flying solo tonight. Well, I'm not solo because I've got several 100,000 audience members with me leaving comments. You may notice that I'm opening the Saturday show and I don't have my normal wingman, Ben Mysalis, co-founder with me of Legal AF and all things Legal AF. You know, he's taking some well-deserved few hours off with his family, and he would do it for me. So I had no problem stepping in and taking over for tonight in the show. And we wish Ben and his family a happy time together for the few hours that he's not behind the microphone. Love you, man. Okay, so let's move into the politics side as I slide into the law side. The shutdown is costing the American economy $15 billion a week. $15 billion a week. Let's put that into a context. SNAP payments, which are anti-hunger payments, used to be the old food stamp program, which 42 million Americans below the poverty line, from babies to children to the elderly to veterans to disabled, rely on, is $8 billion a month. Month of November, $8 billion. Month of December, $8 billion. We're losing $15 billion in the economy because of the shutdown. And what is Donald Trump doing? He's playing golf on our dime. That's called, in my world, that's called theft of honest service. He was elected to do a job, and he's not doing it. And the American people notice it. His approval rating is at 37%. I made a prediction a couple of months ago that it may crack the 30% barrier. Think about that. That means he's lost at least 10 to 12% of MAGA have rejected Donald Trump. You don't get the economy is bad with 72% reporting without a fair amount of MAGA sliding over to criticize Donald Trump, same with the Trump approval rating. And who to blame while he parties it up and golfs it up at Mar-a-Lago. That split screen is something that Donald Trump, this is his Biden problem to a certain degree. Because I was a supporter of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, don't get me wrong. But at the end, and after the COVID restart of the economy, I think that Joe Biden lost touch with the American people, which is surprising given his long commitment to public service for more than 50 years. I think he became a little obtuse. I think he became a little disconnected, a little clueless about the suffering of everyday Americans. Donald Trump, for instance, just like Joe Biden, says the economy is working for everyday Americans. Just be patient. Just be patient. How do you tell a baby who's crying without milk or formula to just be patient? How do you tell your senior loved one who can't afford their medication or anything they need to have dignified life? Just be patient. Just hold on. They said it would be 6 months after the administration started that all of their policies would come to a fruition and create a roaring economy. We're now 10 months in, none of that has happened. It's actually gotten worse. He says golden economy. He says golden ballroom. He says golden Lincoln bathroom. He says golden lettering on the way in the Oval Office. He says rename the stadium where the Washington Commanders football team plays and make it Donald Trump Stadium. It's all he cares about. It's an egomaniac. 72% of America says we're suffering. And that's why the Democrats had a tsunami and a wipeout of the Republican Party on Tuesday because they have focused on affordability. That's code word for Trumponomics is killing us. It's always been the economy stupid. I'm not calling you stupid. That's an old phrase from James Carville when he represented Bill Clinton. It's always been the watchword. And the Democrats are having a national conversation, which is very healthy, between their progressive wing and their democratic socialist wing and their moderate wing. I fall more in the moderate wing. Doesn't mean I reject every aspect of the progressives. But the Bernie-crats and the AOC-crats and who helped get Zoran elected mayor in New York with a relatively close call there. That is one version of democratic ideals. But in big states, which is where presidents come from, like Mikey Sherrill, the New Jersey new governor, and Spanberger, the new Virginia governor, both were known as moderates in the House. They were known as the Mod Squad. And they're the current and future leaders of the Democratic Party for national office. After watching the acceptance speech of Governor-elect Spanberger, who doesn't think she couldn't be president? I do. I think she could be president. I think Mikey Sherrill could be president easily, along with Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker and Pete Buttigieg and others in the party. So that national conversation that we're having in plain sight is healthy. It's always based on morals. It's always based on helping people. It's based on affordability. Nobody could have more laser focused on the kitchen table than Mamdani in New York. That was his entire campaign. Donald Trump declared recently that for the Democrats, affordability is now dead. How is it dead? Tariffs are crushing the American dream. Real estate and pricing around real estate has removed any semblance of being able to afford a home in America. Right now, people aren't worried about owning a home. They're worried about how they're going to pay for what's in their grocery cart, what's in their shopping buggy, which they can't afford. And now all the things that Donald Trump did, all the hundreds of thousands of federal workers and other workers that he threw on unemployment lines, all the funding he cut off to the states, all the undermining of the healthcare system, all the undermining of the public funding that goes into giving people dignity in a social safety net. It's all coming, all those chickens are coming home to roost now on election night and in the courts. I'm glad you're here. People always ask, how can we support the independent and fair and honest commentary and analysis that goes on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF? Well, subscribe to the Midas Touch Network. We also have Legal AF, the YouTube channel. I got great news there for everybody. And it's really a group effort. We just crossed 920,000 subscribers in just about a year. We're going to hit 1 million subscribers on the Legal AF YouTube channel. We've got no outside investors. We've got no paywall. Check now. See if you're already a member there. 10 videos a day, 12 new contributors. Not only do we have Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, and myself, and Sidney Blumenthal with Court of History with Sean Walentz. We're bringing on the ACLU with a regular playlist. We have Democracy Forward, who I'm going to talk a lot about today, and Sky Perryman on a regular playlist. Just some amazing work going on there every day. So come over there and join us. So let me transition now into the cases. And I want to do first 9 losses in 7 days in 8 courts. You know, it's like the 12 days of Christmas, except it's the Grim Reaper version for Donald Trump and his assault on justice. Now, we should not be surprised. Donald Trump has been taking a sledgehammer to the Department of Justice, to the federal judiciary, to the rule of law since he got in office. This is what happens when you elect a felon in chief who's been criminally convicted of crimes and who's been given immunity by the United States Supreme Court. And he believes the Supreme Court has his back. In other words, he's paid off all the refs and he's playing a game that's tilted on a tilted playing field or court, and he's got the refs in his back pocket. And this is what you get. So he hollowed out the hollowed reputation of the Department of Justice. He put a meat puppet, a crash test dummy in the form of Pam Bondi, where he's really his own attorney general. He's put all of his criminal defense team to protect him. Again, theft of honest service. He doesn't care about you and me. He doesn't get up in the morning and brush his teeth and think about how is he going to help the American people. He thinks how he's going to make money for Trump Incorporated. This is a guy who's so out of touch, so clueless, so tone deaf, that on election day, he trolled the poor. He attacked the impoverished in America, who is such a fragile population. We should be embracing them, regardless of our political stripe. And he attacked them and said, effectively, I'm going to make a political football out of you and make a political example out of you because I guess you're poor, to teach the Democrats a lesson. And I'm not going to make any of the $8 billion of SNAP payments. Now, fortunately, groups like the 23 attorneys general, who are Democrats, and Democracy Forward ran into courts and got a series of orders that got $5 billion out of $8 billion flowing to the American people and to the people that are the most fragile. But doesn't it say everything you need to know that Donald Trump was tormenting the poor? And I'm talking about poor Americans with a capital, red, white, and blue A. Not Trenda Aragua, not browns people that he hates, not transgender. I mean, it could include transgender Americans. It's not, migrants who don't have proper immigration status, not criminals. Americans who've done nothing wrong, whose only crime is being proud but impoverished in America. And he decided to do it on Election Day because he has not noticed that the ground has shifted under him related to the economy. There's been a paradigm shift in the last 6 months, and nobody sent Donald Trump the memo. He was so busy using Elon Musk to crush and crash the institutions of our government that he didn't notice that everyday Americans were suffering and are suffering. And we know what to do when we're suffering. We vote the bastards out. We run them out on a rail. Let me give one high level here before my break about the losses in 7 days. I can do it with your help. Let me start with, we'll start in Rhode Island. And you can keep count here tonight on Legal AF and how many I get to cover. This is this week alone, 7 days. Chief Judge of the Rhode Island Federal Court, Judge McConnell, early in the week, and almost got lost in the shuffle, issued a permanent injunction after trial, blocking permanently the attempts by the Trump Department of Transportation to block infrastructure transportation funds to states, blue states, because they won't cooperate with Donald Trump's depraved, inhumane immigration policies. That's now been blocked. Those funds are now flowing. We'll wait to see if there's an appeal, but right now they're flowing. Same judge, Judge McConnell, that's number 2, in Rhode Island, issues not one but 2 temporary restraining orders to force the Trump administration to release $8 billion worth of SNAP payments through electronic cards for anti-hunger programs. 42 million Americans, 16 million children now have gotten at least 5 out of 8 of the $1 billion for the November payment because of that temporary restraining order and the courage of Judge McConnell and the courage of Judge Talwani in Massachusetts, who had a case in front of her. First case was brought by Democracy Forward. Second case was brought by the 23 attorneys general and about SNAP payments. And Judge Talwani also issued an order that got that $5 million flowing. That's 3. Now let's move down the coast to the Eastern District of Virginia, where 2 different judges issued orders against the Trump administration. Judge Fitzpatrick excoriated the Department of Justice in the Comey case, the former FBI director, and ordered that they immediately turn over all documents to James Comey to allow him to prepare for his trial in about 2 months, and said that he was tired of the Department of Justice prosecuting first and investigating second. Judge Curry, a South Carolina judge who's presiding over the Eastern District of Virginia motions to disqualify Lindsay Halligan, ordered all of the grand jury documents and information and transcripts about Lindsay Halligan to be turned over to her so that she could review whether Lindsay Halligan has been illegally appointed or not. That's in Eastern District of Virginia. We also have in the District of Columbia, staying on that area, A jury returned a verdict in 3 hours. That sandwich guy, the paralegal in the Department of Justice, now fired, who, in a peak of anger, a fit of anger, threw a fully wrapped Subway sandwich from Subway, salami sandwich, with mustard and onions, according to the Custom and Border Patrol officer, at his chest, at his bulletproof Subway sandwich-proof vest, and then ran. They tried to indict him for a felony of assault on a federal officer. No self-respecting grand jury in D.C. would indict that. So then Janine Pirro and her crackpot U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. brought the case as a misdemeanor. The jury, over a plate of sandwiches, I'm not making this up, acquitted. My favorite moment in that trial is when the lawyer for the defendant looked at the jury and said, "He did it. He threw the sandwich." And then proved that the sandwich could not have exploded all over law enforcement because it was still wrapped on the sidewalk. Despite one of my favorite pieces of testimony in my 35-year career, the cop saying, the Border Patrol officer saying, "I could smell the onions and the mustard." Oh, the horror of the I mean, I agree with him on the onions. I'm not putting that on my salami sandwich, although it does sound tasty tonight. So 2 for Rhode Island, 1 for Massachusetts, Judge Talwani, 2 in the Eastern District of Virginia, 1 jury verdict. And now I'm not even getting to tariffs yet. Now let me move to Chicago. Judge Ellis enters a preliminary injunction. She says the actions of the Trump shock forces in Chicago, on the streets of Chicago, to abuse First Amendment protesters, including the clergy, including the members of the press, shock the conscience. She found that the leader of Operation Midway Blitz, Bavino, lied under oath. We call that perjury. And she entered her injunction blocking, for now, the Trump administration from abusing and violently attacking members of the clergy, members of the press, and veterans who are protesting Donald Trump's policy. She read from the famous poem by Carl Sandburg called Chicago in courtroom, also quoted a number of founding fathers, and ended with James Madison's letter to his wife, Abigail. John Adams' letter to Abigail Adams about once freedom is lost and liberty is lost, it can't be regained. We now move finally to number 8, I assume it is now, 2 McConnell, 1 Talwani, D.C. jury, 2 in the Eastern District of Virginia, 1 in Chicago. Now let's move to Oregon. This is 8 losses for Donald Trump in the last week. Judge, I'm going to talk more about some of these in detail on the show. Judge Immergut issued her final permanent injunction after trial, blocking, for now, the use of National Guard on the streets of Oregon, finding that Donald Trump violated the Constitution. He violated the 10th Amendment. He violated the statute related to the delegation of his authority, and she has permanently blocked it under the facts there. And then you had the tariffs, where you couldn't even tell who were the Trump picks, like Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, and at least those 2, and who were the moderates on the Supreme Court during the tariff discussion, to see if Donald Trump's 200 tariffs on almost all goods around the country is going to be allowed to be a delegated power from Article 1 to Article 2, from the Congress to the president, under a statute that doesn't even mention tariffs. And the whole fight was over taxes. Aren't tariffs taxes? And if they're taxes, Donald Trump is dead. And if they're seen as taxes and revenue generating, he's dead. I'll tell you why they screwed up in that case. I don't think that's going to go well for Donald Trump either. And that's just in a week. If I was a lawyer in a law firm that had Donald Trump and his government as a client, and I had to report 9 losses in a week, I would assume I'd be fired. But he has no one to blame but himself with this Department of Justice, the way he's left it in shambles. I'm going to come back and talk about some of these individual cases. I'm glad you're here. You may have noticed I'm alone. No, it's not the intersection I do on Tuesday nights. Ben is traveling with his family, and I was happy to fill in for him and handle the show. I know he'd do it for me, and he would do it for the Legal AFers and the Midas Mighty. There's many ways to support what we do here in our honest commentary. Subscribing, Midas Touch, and Legal AF. We're going to hit 1 million subscribers, which is an amazing milestone and crashing through a glass ceiling for podcasts and for YouTube channels on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Come over there, take a minute, hit the free subscribe button. No paywall, no outside investors. Just become a subscriber. And then we've got Legal AF Substack. So besides the 10 videos a day, 12 different commentators, including myself, I usually do the first 4 videos. And then I start working in people like Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, Civil Action, Court Accountability Action, Court of History. We're bringing on the ACLU. We have Democracy Forward. I think you're really going to enjoy everything we do there. We also have Legal AF Substack, whole nother universe, and a great way to support the show. For $6.77 a month, you become a paid member. You'll get exclusive content. You'll get the court filings that we post. You'll get the live videos that we do every day to keep you updated. Legal AF Substack is the way to become a full card-carrying member of Legal AF. Of course, we've got the Legal AF podcast, more than 5 years in the making, regularly in the top 20 of podcasts, regardless of their genre, on YouTube's weekly rankings. That's on you. That's because of you. We could use some more help on the audio version to keep us up in the top 50 under news for Apple Pod. Leave a comment and a 5-star review and all of that. These are the way to help the show. In addition, we've got our pro-democracy sponsors, and here they are. Ever wake up sweaty, freezing, or just plain uncomfortable? The temperature in your bedroom can make or break your sleep. That's why I switched to Miracle Made Sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. With Miracle Made, you'll sleep at the perfect temperature. Whether you run hot or cold, these sheets keep you in the comfort zone from the moment you crawl in to the moment you wake up. And here's what I love. They stay cleaner longer. Thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Made sheets stay fresh up to 3 times longer than regular sheets, meaning fewer odors, fewer wash cycles, and way less laundry. They're luxuriously comfortable too, smooth, breathable, and soft like what you'd find in a 5-star hotel, but without the luxury price tag. So upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made Sheets today. You'll save over 40%. And when you use promo code LegalAF, you'll get an extra 20% off plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/legalaf. Code LegalAF at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. You've probably seen all the hype around GLP-1 drugs lately, but what if there was a safe, natural, and effective alternative? That's where Veracity comes in. This podcast is sponsored by Veracity, an all-natural way to slim down, get energized, and sharpen your focus. Veracity tackles the root cause of so many issues: metabolism. Their drug-free, clinically proven, doctor-formulated solutions help support your body's needs to live your healthiest life. If your goal is weight loss, try Metabolism Ignite, the #1 doctor-recommended GLP-1 booster and GLP-1 alternative. No side effects, no allergens. It's plant-based, reduces hunger by 85%, and clinically proven to lose, on average, 9 pounds in 90 days. Metabolism Ignite combines lemon verbena and hibiscus extracts, green coffee bean extract, and magnesium. It's safe even if you're on GLP-1 medications. Founder and CEO Ali Egan, a certified hormonal health coach, created Veracity to help people achieve optimal health naturally. And it's safe for everyone, including new moms. 100% natural and caffeine-free. Clinical trials showed no negative side effects. Veracity offers natural options that actually work and help support a healthier lifestyle. Just 2 capsules every morning. Make it simple to stick with. Veracity isn't just for weight loss. They also have supplements for stress, gut health, burnout, and more. So make the switch to GLP-1s the natural way. Head to VeracitySelfCare.com and use code LegalAF for up to 45% off your order. Once again, that's VeracitySelfCare.com for up to 45% off. Use promo code LegalAF so they know I sent you. Welcome back. You're on Legal AF, the podcast. I am Michael Popok. I'm short one host today. Ben Mycelis is traveling with his family. And thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors and those that support Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and Legal AF, the Substack, along with our podcast. All right. Now, a lot of people woke up confused in our audience, and I like to pride myself in making sure that people aren't confused. I want them to at least understand without smoke or sunshine what has just happened with the SNAP payments and Ketanji Brown Jackson having entered a temporary stay. Because I saw a lot of chatter, a lot of chatter out there about how could she and why would she block, and she's undermining the poor, and it's cold comfort to the poor and the impoverished. And I understand, and I can empathize with all those feelings. That's not quite what happened. And I think it's actually a smart move by Ketanji Brown Jackson. And let me explain it to you. So what happened is, after 2 temporary restraining orders entered by Judge McConnell, the chief judge in Rhode Island, Trump, even though on one hand his Department of Justice was taking appeals, and he was saying in social media that he was not going to feed the poor. Is this like shocking that it took a series of lawsuits to get Donald Trump to care about Americans? It's just fascinating. But even though he was saying all of that in the in the cyberspace, in real life, they were paying out the money. So I was happy to report at some point yesterday that $5 billion of the $8 billion total payment for November hit the electronic cards, the debit cards of 42 million Americans, giving them at least, a little bit more than half of what they were looking for. I mean, it's still 37% short. And I wouldn't want to be 37% short, but at least gives them something. They can go to the supermarket now and take, their 200 of their 350 or whatever it is and go shopping while we continue to fight over the $3 billion for the poor, and which is immoral. So that happened. Donald Trump then runs to the First Circuit, as we thought he would, asking the First Circuit, and he asked the trial court judge the same thing, to enter a stay to give them time to brief whether they should enter a preliminary injunction or a stay of the order forcing them to pay the remaining $3 billion, whether they wanted a short stay in order to argue for a longer stay, I guess is the right way to put it. And the First Circuit and Judge McConnell denied it, which means they were going to go to the Supreme Court. Now, they did not go to the Supreme Court on what we classically refer to as what we refer to as a classic shadow docket emergency injunction or emergency application. They didn't do that. They went and asked for the same thing that they asked the First Circuit for, which was a temporary administrative stay, the lowest level of stay, to give them time to brief the issue, to give First Circuit time to consider the issue. And they didn't say otherwise they're going to bring an emergency appeal. They said, or them filing a writ of certiorari, which is code word for a regular traditional appeal. So they were signaling how they plan to appeal. We're going to try to get a stay from the First Circuit. If we come back, we're not sure we're going to do an emergency application. And that sends a chill down our spine every time we hear emergency application, because that has generally gone Donald Trump's way 86% of the time at the Supreme Court with the MAGA 6. He didn't ask for that. I read it carefully. I read it several times. You can read it for yourself. It's up in Legal AF Substack. John Sauer, the Solicitor General for Trump, who's been his right-hand man for criminal appeals forever, since he was a criminal defendant and convicted felon. He didn't ask for that. So Ketanji Brown Jackson gets it. Why? Because she's the Associate Justice assigned to the First Circuit. And when you get a request for administrative stay, a hold the ring for a short period of time, hours or days, she's the first stop on the train for that circuit. And she issued her administrative stay for a short amount of time. And she said it to allow the First Circuit with quick dispatch to make its ruling like in the next 24, 48 hours. Like I plan on updating you as early as tomorrow that the First Circuit has ruled on this issue already, to give them time. And once they rule, then she'll sit back and watch to see in the chess match, this perverse chess match that's harming poor people, what Trump does next. She also has eyes and ears. She can read. She knows that $5 out of the $8 billion already got released, and the fight now is over the remaining $3 billion, which Donald Trump doesn't want to have to pay. He's already undermined his positions in front of the Supreme Court, Trump has, because he paid the $5 billion already. It's hard for him to say, as in the other funding cases, where the Supreme Court sided with him about cutting funding, where he didn't pay anything. Here he paid 5 out of 8. And now he's just fighting over the last 3, which matters to one group, the impoverished, the below poverty line Americans, and not so much to the government, except they say, well, we won't get the money back. You know, that's a ridiculous attempt through make weight to balance the equities here. And she sees that too. So she had to make a decision. She could have referred it to the full 9, but that would have given the MAGA 6 time to coalesce around a position. She took it for herself. Smart. Let the first make their decision. Then see what Donald Trump does next. He's under tremendous political pressure. I outlined it for you at the top of this podcast tonight. He's under tremendous political pressure to stop abusing and exploiting the poor. Americans in red states, especially, or included. So he might just pay the $3 billion like he paid the $5 billion. Remember, he told Judge McConnell that he couldn't make even the $5 billion in payments because it was too complicated and difficult. They had to make tables and graphs and charts. They couldn't just do the math and send the money to the government, to the states and tell them just to whack off 37%. And then they made the payments within hours. So she doesn't believe them. So yes, it's outside the record, but she can read. So I know a lot of people said, no, make him pay the $3 billion. But if she denied it, they would have just filed an emergency appeal and asked for full review. She would have then been forced to send it, as is the custom of the Supreme Court. Now it's on the shadow docket. She's trying to avoid the shadow docket. She's trying to avoid all those funding decisions that the Supreme Court made in Donald Trump's favor over the spring and summer. And she did it deftly. So everybody was happy about Ketanji Brown Jackson, and they said she's brilliant, and she's the conscience of the Supreme Court when she ruled in favor of transgender Americans and issued a scathing dissent when the Trump administration got the Supreme Court 6-3 this week also to force transgender people to mark on their passports gender incongruous markings, meaning their identity is female, but they're having to mark it as male because that was the gender assigned at birth. And now they think she's lost her mind and she's suddenly dumbed down. No, let's give her more credit than that. And I think hopefully now I've explained why she did it. She actually boxed out the MAGA 6. She boxed out the Trump administration. She put pressure on the Trump administration politically to release the $3 billion. She put pressure on the First Circuit to issue its ruling. She gave the Heisman to Donald Trump on a delay to let political pressure build on him. And then if they do an emergency injunction or emergency application, which they said they weren't going to do as of right now, then she'll deal with that in the next 48 hours. That's the story about how we got here with Ketanji Brown Jackson. And that's why I was not up in arms. Although my initial knee-jerk reaction was like, no, not her. We even had like a text chain in the Midas world. We're like, oh no, the optics. Yeah, I get it. But once you get beneath the optics and you start reading, which is what I think you support us to do here with our honest commentary, it became a lot more apparent what she was doing. She's playing a 5-level, one of those Star Trek chess games that Spock used to play on 4 boards. And the rest of us are playing like Parcheesi. So that's where we are with that. I wanted to lead off with Snap. Then we've got, let me turn to the tariffs for a minute. And I spotted something, and it's gotten some traction now. I see it in reporting about a major blunder that was made by John Sauer, the Solicitor General for the United States. He's the guy you can't listen to. Sounds like he gargled with a pot of bourbon and broken pavement. You know that guy? Now, I think he's got some sort of condition, so I'm not here to violate the ADA and say, but he is hard to listen to. You know, I've got friends that have speech impediments that are successful trial lawyers. There's a famous lawyer in Miami who I'm very close with, have been in the past, who has a stutter. And he's a magnificent trial advocate. So I'm not, you know, but he's hard to listen to. And he also has this habit, which is not a medical condition, of trying to pack, 50 pounds of potatoes into a 10-pound sack of argument. He almost is like, he's getting paid by the word. Whatever could be said eloquently in 20 words, John Sauer says, well, 500 words. I could do it in 500 words, 1,000 words. And he double talks constantly. He sounds like a fast talking, double talking snake oil salesman, like used car salesman. And it's starting to grate. Talk about make America great again. It's starting to grate on members of the Supreme Court. You can tell by the oral argument. His major faux pas and blunder is he painted himself into a corner about tariffs aren't taxes. Tariffs aren't revenue producing. Because we all know that's a lie. And he put it in his brief. He put in his brief that it's raising revenue. He quoted Donald Trump extolling the virtues of tariffs to replace lost income and the trillions of dollars that came into the Treasury to help the American economy. Just like Donald Trump did on Inauguration Day, talking about him creating a external revenue service to replace income tax by using tariffs as income producing, revenue producing. So let me play first for you the clip of John Sauer getting led down the primrose path and painted into a corner, to mix my metaphors there, mix my sayings, by, of all people, Chief Justice John Roberts. Let's play the clip.
But I mean, and I think this is a question for the other side as well. It's two-facing. Yes, of course, tariffs and dealings with foreign powers, but the vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Let me say two things in response to that. First, the notion that the taxes are all borne by Americans and are not borne by foreign producers whose goods are imported is empirically, there's no basis for that in the record. It's actually a mix.
Well, who pays the tariffs? If a tariff is imposed on automobiles, who pays them?
Typically there'd be regardless of who the importer of record is, there'd be a contract that would go along the sort of line of transfer that would allocate the tariff, and there'd be different. Sometimes the foreign producer would pay them. Sometimes the importer would bear the cost. The importer could be an American, could be a foreign company. A lot of times it's a wholly owned American subsidiary of a foreign corporation. So it gets allocated. The empirical estimates range from like 30% to 80% of like how much is borne by American
I mean, it's
citizens.
been suggested that the tariffs are responsible for significant reduction in our deficit. I would say that's raising revenue domestically.
There certainly is an incidental and collateral effect of the tariffs that they do raise revenue, but it's very important that they are regulatory tariffs, not revenue-raising tariffs. And the way you can see this, I think, if you look at this policy.
Revenue is incidental. It's policy and regulatory. Now, why does he keep saying that? Because the statute that he's relying on to try to steal Article 1 power from Congress talks about regulation and licenses. So he's got to try to fit this ridiculously triangle peg into a round hole about that tariffs are regulatory and or that they're licenses and that they're not revenue generating, that they're not taxes. And you see how well he did with that ridiculous tap dance in front of a justice that should have been on his side. Especially when the American people remember things like Donald Trump on his inauguration talking about the External Revenue Service and raising money like taxes through tariffs. And as the justices reminded John Sauer, even though it was in his brief, that is solely the province of Congress, and it's non-delegable. They can't send it off to Trump, just like they can't, the Article 3 can't allow Donald Trump to create his own court system. How would they like that? The executive branch has a court system now, an economic court created with the war powers and the foreign affair powers of the president, which this Supreme Court seems to love, bends over backwards to give Donald Trump as many foreign affairs and Article 2 powers that they can find. How about if he sets up his own court? How would you like that, competing with you on interpreting economic regulation related to foreign-facing issues? I mean, that's the next step. They wouldn't like that. It's when it's their turf. They shouldn't like it when it's Congress's turf. And so they were reminded, Sauer was reminded time and time again, that it's the power to tax and to raise money has to go through both chambers of Congress by a majority and then signed by a president before people get bites taken out of their wallets. Not the president imposing a tariff that gets passed along as a tax to consumers. Let me play you the clip of Trump talking about the External Revenue Service, which completely undermines their argument that tariffs are only incidental revenue producers. Let's play the clip.
Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before.
Bad for him. Let me just give you my overview. Amy Coney Barrett is not in favor. I don't think she's going to vote for the president having tariff power under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which was a limiting statute given to Jimmy Carter in 1977 to stop him from stealing power from Congress. Not one with this capacious superpowers for a president, which violates the non-delegation doctrine, violates the major questions doctrine created by the Roberts Court to kill Biden policies, which stands for the proposition that if it's a major issue, like giving the power of the tariff and tax to a president, it has to be expressly spelled out in a statute, not done by implication or word association or construction of a statute, that Congress doesn't hide an elephant in a mouse hole, if you know what I mean. And so if you read the statutory construction, if you look at the meaning of Article 1 about the power to tax and to tariff being held by Congress, if you use the major questions doctrine, if you use the non-delegation doctrine, Donald Trump loses and should lose. I think Amy Coney Barrett is over with Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So we have 4 votes against Donald Trump's tariffs. We have 3 votes in favor. I think it's Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh. That leaves Gorsuch and Roberts. By the questioning, it looks to me like Gorsuch is not going to give the president, any president, the power to tax through tariff. He said things like it's a one-way ratchet. Congress could never get the power back. This goes back to taxation without representation with the Boston Tea Party. He wasn't buying that the revenue isn't a tax or isn't revenue enhancing or revenue collecting. If he votes the way his questions were asked and him being dissatisfied with the answers, this should now be at least 5-4. Roberts too, just on the major questions doctrine, should be 5-4. But we'll have to see. You can't trust this administration. You can't trust this Supreme Court. So we'll follow it. I think we'll get a ruling within 3 to 6 months. In the meantime, they're letting Donald Trump collect all the money. There was a chilling moment for the Trump administration, which I'm going to play for you now, when Amy Coney Barrett said to the advocates to tear down the tariffs. Suppose we rule in your favor. How do we pay back the money? How does the Trump administration pay back the money? Sounds like it'd be a little bit messy, right? In fact, let me play that clip.
And then if you win, tell me how the reimbursement process would work. Would it be a complete mess? I mean, you're saying before the government promised reimbursement, and now you're saying, well, that's rich, but how would this work? It seems to me like it could be a mess.
So the first thing I'd say is that just underscores just how major a question this is. The very fact that you were dealing with this with quotas, there's no refund process to the tunes of billions of dollars or embargoes, but there is here. But for our case, the way it would work is, in this case, the government stipulated for the 5 plaintiffs that they would get the refunds. So for us, that's how it would work. Your question, I take it, is about everyone else. We don't have a class action or anything like that. With respect to everyone else, there's a whole specialized body of trade law, and it's in 19 U.S.C. 1514 outlines all these administrative procedures. It's a very complicated thing. There's got to be an administrative protest. There was a harbor management case earlier that this court was involved with in the United States Shoe, in which, the refund process took a long time. There were any number of claims and equitable relief.
So a mess.
So it's difficult,
okay.
Absolutely. We don't deny that it's difficult, but I think what this court has said in the McKesson case in 1990 is that serious economic dislocation isn't a reason to do something. Northern Pipeline, you guys stayed your decision for a while in order to let the congressional process unfold. There may be a congressional process here as well. You may be able to also be that this court could limit its decision to prospective relief under the John Q. Hammons case. So there's lots of possibilities.
Well, she didn't care about it being messy when they ripped away for 50 years a woman's right to choose and the havoc it played on women's health and autonomy and body autonomy. So now she's worried about how money is going to be transferred back. I don't know. They can either do it refund. They haven't spent the money, reallocate the money, pay it back over time to the American people, give it to them as a tax deduction, refund by tax deduction, give it to them as a credit on their taxes so everybody gets it back. That's one way. You can make it prospective, although that doesn't help the businesses out of business right now, and only end it now, but let the government keep the money. But I don't know how the government keeps the money if their actions were unconstitutional. The only resort, the only way to fix it, the only remedy is to give the money back. But the fact that she even is worried about that should be concerning and keeping the Trump administration up at night. And of course, they're whistling in the graveyard or past the graveyard because you've got, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, with a big Cheshire cat smile, smiling on CNBC. We won! You heard it here first. We have won this. Is it possible we're all wrong? It's possible. I thought they lost the immunity argument, although when you listen to it closely, the people that I've identified, like Gorsuch and Roberts, were siding with the president in those questionings. But we'll continue to follow that. I want to take on one more major topic, which I thought was interesting, which might give us a window into how this Supreme Court may rule on the issue, as I manage expectations. This week, the day after the tariffs, Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling against transgender people. Let me just put this into paraphrase others in the past, like Kanye West, which is ironic that I'm paraphrasing Kanye West, given my history of having cross-examined him within an inch of his life in a case. Donald Trump hates transgender Americans. Donald Trump hates transgender Americans. He's done everything he can to demean them, dehumanize them, push them to commit suicide, and take away their rights. This is one of the most disadvantaged groups in America. It represents like 2% or less of America. It's probably even less than that. And yet Donald Trump, on day one of his 100 executive orders was to crush the hopes and dreams of the transgender American community. Operative word there, American. And so he pushed this State Department policy that changed 30 years of State Department policy to allow people to have on their passports either no gender identification, a photo, or have a gender identification that matched how they live their life and not what gender was assigned to them at birth. And Joe Biden went one step further, and he said you could have an X if you're binary, or you don't consider yourself as having a gender, so to speak. And Donald Trump removed all that. And now the State Department require, with a new policy, that as part of the identification on the passports, because it's in the area of foreign affairs, back to the foreign affairs power, that people have to list their gender at birth, even though they're presenting as a woman or as a man or as binary or as whatever. And the Supreme Court, 6-3 MAGA, voted for it and upheld it. But also said, we're not ruling on the merits, but we are, because we think Trump's going to ultimately win. And in addition to that, this is necessary because Trump has ultimate foreign affairs facing power. And this deals with how we present ourselves to the global world. And he's got a policy of there's only two genders in America. What happened to the disadvantaged? What happened to the underprivileged that the Supreme Court is supposed to protect? And Ketanji Brown Jackson, the same person people were slightly mad at for her 48-hour stay, she had a scathing dissent. And she said, and I paraphrase, the Supreme Court has forgotten its assignment when it gets an emergency application like this and when it's trying to weigh the balance of equities. And it's doing it the wrong way, and it's the shadow docket all over again, and it's wrong. And transgender Americans have rights that are not being properly balanced by the Supreme Court as they bend over backwards to support Donald Trump, and she dissents. Now, in there, though, I was a little bit troubled because it came out like literally a day after the tariff argument, where it was obvious to most observers that Donald Trump's side got shellacked. And they started talking about Trump's foreign affairs power and is robust, and he's able to declare whether you're a male or a female as a result of the foreign affairs power. And I sort of had an gulp there for a moment, because what I don't want them to do is to say that even though IEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, doesn't say tariffs, they somehow read in with the foreign affairs power under Article 2 of the president, and they give him the power to tax. How far are they going to stretch this foreign affairs power? I was a little concerned. It may have just been a bone they were throwing to the president. Like, well, we're not going to give you the tariffs, but you are going to be able to embarrass and shame transgender people on their passports. How's that? The fact that I even have to do an analysis of transgender people being maligned and undermined in America to talk about tariffs just shows you how upside down world we are in with the United States Supreme Court. I mean, Ketanji Brown Jackson in her dissent reminds Americans that the suicidal ideation, the rate of suicide or taking your own life for people who are transgender, who are not allowed to identify or have to have the dissonance and the incongruity of having to identify themselves in a way different than they present themselves and they self-identify, creates a tremendous uptick in people taking their own life. And people being assaulted and abused and physically assaulted at airports by the TSA. Invasive pat-downs, drop your underwear, where they're wearing gloves to do an exam, to embarrass people, to force people to out themselves as their gender at birth. But the fact that I even have to talk about foreign affairs and the rights of transgender people, which this Supreme Court MAGA 6 puts on the same scale, is just disgusting. But I'm glad you're here to talk about all of it without smoke or sunshine. You're on Legal AF, the podcast. People might be thinking, Popok is not letting Ben talk. Popok's hogging the microphone again. Did I tune into The Intersection, his show on Tuesday nights on Midas Touch? No. Ben is traveling with his family, and I offered to pitch in the way he would for me to do the show and keep it rolling. We don't miss a show. I don't know if anybody's noticed. We've done the show for 5 years straight. We're like the Postal Service. Through I'm going to butcher this phrase, right? Through sleet and hail and rain and dark of night, nothing will stop us from delivering our Legal AF commentary to you. We've never missed a show in 5 years. 2 shows a week, 5 years straight, no day off. Ben might have missed a show. I might have been traveling. Karen might be traveling. We've had fill-ins. Ben did a show like this about 3 years ago by himself. I'm doing one now because of our devotion to our audience, to the Legal AFers, to the Midas Mighty, to the community that we've built. When I started, and I joked that I'm employee number 4, so to speak, of Midas, 3 brothers and then me, we had 200 to 300 followers on a website. Now, Midas is about to hit 5.7 million. Legal AF YouTube, which is about a year old, is about to hit 1 million. Go check now. Go check now on Legal AF YouTube and see if you're one of the 920,000. We're going to hit that 1 million if it kills me before, I don't know about Thanksgiving, but certainly, you want to have it a birthday present. My birthday is December 2nd. How about for my birthday, we get 1 million subscribers on Legal AF YouTube with your help? That would be fantastic. So and then we've got Legal AF Substack. If you want to become a full-fledged member and support and help fund what we do, we made it easy. It's about $6.77 a month for unlimited content effectively on Legal AF Substack. Become a part of that community as well. And then we've got our pro-democracy sponsors, some of which have been with us from the very beginning, some of which just joined us recently and maybe even tonight, who are here with us on tonight's podcast. And those are the ways to support us. Help us with the audio versions, Apple Pod and Spotify. Leave 5-star reviews. Watch us on YouTube Wednesdays and Saturday nights. Help us stay in the top 20 or so of the YouTube weekly rankings for podcasts, and top 50 or so for news. I think we're the #1 law and politics podcast in America, and that's all because of you. We appreciate each and every one of you. So let's have a commercial break now, our final one of the show. Shh, I got a secret. I'm obsessed with my Lola blanket. From the moment I pulled it out of the box, I could tell that this wasn't your average throw. The faux fur is unbelievably soft, like luxury level soft. And it just makes my space feel calm, inviting, and put together. Even here in Miami, I love wrapping up with it at the end of a day. Watching a show with my family, answering emails, or just relaxing. It's become part of my daily wind-down ritual. Honestly, I'm already thinking about replacing every other blanket I own with a Lola. It's no surprise Lola is the world's #1 blanket, made with ultra-soft vegan faux fur and a signature 4-way stretch. It's machine washable, no pilling, no shedding, and it stays flawless after every wash. It's the perfect gift, personal, beautiful, and something people actually use every day. Give the gift of softness this holiday season with Lola blankets. For a limited time, our listeners are getting a huge 40% off their entire order at lolablankets.com by using code LegalAF at checkout. Just head to lolablankets.com and use code LegalAF for 40% off. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack and hydration sponsor. IQ Bar is the better-for-you plant protein-based snack made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash. One of the things I love about IQ Bar is their Ultimate Sampler Pack. It's a great way to try all of their products and flavors. You get 9 IQ Bars, 8 IQ Mix Sticks, and 4 IQ Joe Sticks. So whether you're craving a mint chocolate chip protein bar, a blueberry pomegranate hydration mix, or a toasted hazelnut coffee, there's something for every mood and moment. IQ Bar's products are entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners. They're packed with clean, delicious ingredients like magnesium, lion's mane, and adaptogens so you can stay physically and mentally sharp. IQ Bar has become part of my daily routine, starting my morning with IQ Joe, grabbing an IQ Bar to refuel, or mixing an IQ mix after a workout keeps me energized and focused without the sugar crash. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bars, brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the sampler pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text Legal AF to 64,000. Text Legal AF to 64,000. That's Legal AF to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Welcome back to Legal AF, the podcast. No, I haven't hijacked the show. I'm Michael Popok. Ben Marcellus is with his family traveling, and I offered to take over for tonight as he would do for me. We can't let the Mightiest Mighty and the Legal AFers down. We've never missed a show in 5 years. That's a streak that Lou Gehrig or Cal Ripken would be proud of. But we do it all for you. You motivate us to bring our brand of honest commentary to you. Our First Amendment rights won't be compromised, and we won't let yours be either. Thank you for being here on Legal AF, the podcast. I want to end the show with 2 back-to-back orders by federal judges. One, Judge Ellis in Chicago, the other, Judge Immergut in Oregon. Judge Immergut, a Trump appointee. Judge Ellis, a Biden appointee. They came to the same and right place for justice separately as one of the 9 losses for Donald Trump and his Trump Department of Justice this week. Judge Ellis has been trying to protect First Amendment expression on the streets of Chicago for the last month. She's issued a series of orders, including temporary restraining orders, and now a preliminary injunction to stop the attack on the, wait for it, the clergy, First Amendment protesters, veterans, and the press who are protesting peacefully protesting primarily Donald Trump's depraved immigration policy. And she caught the government in a lie. In fact, she caught Greg Bavino, the head of Operation Midway Operation Midway Blitz for the Trump administration, lying under oath in when he tried to justify violating her temporary restraining order, not to use weapons of war, not to use military grade riot gear, pepper balls, pepper spray, tear gas, non-lethal but very painful rubber bullets against First Amendment expression. And he lied and said that the reason he fired his weapon, his tear gas, was because he was hit with a rock. And then he had to admit under oath that he lied, because there was video all over the place that showed that didn't happen. In fact, here is the clip of Bovino lying in his deposition, and therefore to the judge under oath that she cited in her order. We have a name for this in our business, in the legal profession. It's called perjury. And the lawyers for the Department of Justice are in trouble because they put him on, and that's called suborning perjury. Let's play the clip.
Mr. Bavino, I want to talk with you next about another comment that you have made. You said on October 30 that from what you have seen, all of the uses of force by yourself and the men under your command have been more than exemplary, your words. You still stand by that?
Yes.
So when you tackled Scott Blackburn, as shown in the video marked for identification as Exhibit 8, that use of force on your part was more than exemplary?
Objective form lacks foundation.
As we talked earlier, that was not a reportable use of force.
Not a use of
placed
force.
him in under arrest. I didn't tackle him. I placed him under arrest.
Now, Judge Ellis, who started her 90-minute recitation from the bench of her order, started with Carl Sandburg's Chicago poem, and ended with one of our founding fathers in a letter, James Madison to John Adams to Abigail Adams about the loss of liberty, which can never be recovered. And in between, she said the Trump administration's actions shock the conscience, and she issued her preliminary injunction. I dare the Trump administration to appeal that. The Seventh Circuit has already sided with one of her colleagues and has blocked the use of the National Guard on the streets of Chicago. That issue is up at the Supreme Court, even though Judge Ellis's decision now has not yet been appealed. I dare the Trump administration to try to defend lying members of the Custom and Border Patrol and federal security officers who are taking down and tackling people from behind, firing tear gas and pepper balls at the clergy and lying about it. I want that debate. And I'm glad that Judge Ellis stood up for what is right and what is moral and what is ethical in calling out the Trump administration and its depravity. And that which now has me turned to Judge Immergut, a Trump appointee. She's been trying for the last 2 months to keep Donald Trump from violating the Constitution, violating the 10th Amendment, violating sovereignty of states in how he rolled out the National Guard, sent California and Texas troops into Oregon to try to do an end run around her temporary restraining order. Well, we're beyond temporary restraining order. We're beyond preliminary injunction. We're up to permanent injunction, which means the case is over. 3-day trial last week. She took testimony. She heard testimony. And in a 106-page decision issued last night on time, she declared that Donald Trump has unconstitutionally taken over the National Guard, the 200 members of the Oregon National Guard. He's violated the precepts and the principles of our Constitution set forth by our founders and our framers to prevent tyranny, to prevent an overgrown president from using a standing army against his people. She cited, too, the debate around our Constitution, and she reminded everybody that the power to send out the militia, the National Guard, is a power of Congress in Article 1. And in Section 8, and that power was delegated, but by statute, limited in scope to the president under certain limited circumstances to let him be able to act in real time quickly. Insurrection, rebellion, inability to execute the federal laws using regular forces. Then and only then can you call for backup and try to take over and commandeer the National Guard of a state. And unless and until that ever happens, the National Guard, the state militia, is under the control of the governor. That's part of our federalism. That was part of the compromise to get states to join the federal union, the government, a more perfect union. And so she said, there's no rebellion. There's no armed, organized insurrection. At best, it's people peacefully protesting. Yes, there were some flare-ups in June. But by the time Donald Trump sent the troops in September, all the violence had been quelled by local police officers, local law enforcement, even local federal security officers. Nobody in ICE, and this was a point that was made by Judge Immergut, no one in ICE, no federal security officer asked for the National Guard. And yet Donald Trump, to embarrass and troll the Democrats, the blue states, blue cities, and the brands and the governors and all of that, sent in the troops 3 months after 3 months after the cow left the barn, closed the door. And the judge cited to, in real life, evidence on the ground that did not support a rebellion finding, an insurrection finding, nor that ICE could not execute its laws to pick up, arrest, detain, process migrants. No examples of that. Most of the violence was protester against counter-protester. That's First Amendment expression. So Judge Immergut issued her order. Game over. Permanent block. Now the Trump administration can take an appeal, but they have to know already that it may be a losing proposition because the Ninth Circuit, which sits over Oregon and California, already sided with Immergut in their own way. Because when there was a 3-judge panel that ruled against her, dominated by 2 Trump appointees, they reversed it. They vacated it. To hear on a full 11-person en banc panel the case over again. But now we've moved beyond the temporary restraining orders. Those are now moot and dead, and Trump is going to abandon that appeal. We now move on, if he's going to appeal Judge Immergut's decision to stop the deployment of the National Guard on the streets of Portland, Oregon. Good luck. I think under these circumstances, the most 3-judge panels of the Ninth Circuit will vote against Donald Trump. Now, we're still waiting for the Supreme Court to rule about when a president, and we're going to get proper, I guess, I'm going to get proper guidance finally from the Supreme Court on the Seventh Circuit case, which can be used in all the other cases. And they seem to be hung up because they asked for additional briefing at the Supreme Court about what regular forces mean. Because if we're in that world under 10 USC 12406, a statute of delegation to Trump, if we're in that world, then there has to be a inability for the president to execute federal law as the executive branch with regular forces. Now, are regular forces the military, the army, the standing army, the Marines, the Navy? Is that the armed forces? Is it that and federal security officers? Because there are federal security officers that guard buildings like ICE. Is it that combined with, the federal, Border Patrol and Customs and Border Patrol and ICE? Is that it? Do you add in local law enforcement? And then and only then are you allowed to call for backup and take over and do the extraordinary thing and cross the divide that the founding fathers wanted us to have to protect us from tyranny and take over the state's militia and turn it on itself. That's for the Supreme Court to rule. I think that question they've asked to have further briefed on in the month of November spells trouble for the Trump administration. I don't think that's a good question for them to be asking if you're on the Trump side of the argument, but we'll continue to follow it all. Covered a lot here on Legal AF, even though I was solo, my first solo ride in 5 years. I got a show called The Intersection on Tuesday nights on Midas Touch, where I do commentary on things political and or legal. You can catch me there. If you want to know how to follow all things Legal AF, there's so many different ways to support what we do here. Legal AF, the podcast, started it all. I co-founded it with Ben Meiselas more than 5 years ago. Never missed a show. We've never missed a show. Audio versions on Apple and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. Go back and forth between the video and the audio. And that helps us in the rankings. We're the #1 law and politics podcast in America, and that's because of you. We also have to support and keep us on the air and keep us funded and fund this honest assessment and commentary, our First Amendment rights to be heard, your First Amendment right to hear us. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel. Check now. See if you are a subscriber. If you're not, help us build to 1 million subscribers in just about a year. We're at 920,000 plus this weekend alone. And that's all because of you. No paywall, no outside investors. Become a member of Legal AF, the YouTube channel. And then, of course, we've got Legal AF, the Substack, where I think I kept it to less than $7 a month, not a week, for a fascinating content. 8-9 pieces a day up on Substack, including live reporting. And then over on Legal AF, the YouTube channel, I got 12 contributors. We do 10 videos a day. First 4 are usually mine. And then we turn to Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, and Sean Walentz and Sidney Blumenthal, who are our resident historians on Court of History. And then Lisa Graves and Mike Sachs and Alex Aronson and others for court accountability action about corruption in the federal court system. And then we're having Democracy Forward and Skye Perryman, who's got over 100 cases successful against the Trump administration. She comes on and briefs our audience on Democracy Forward. The American Civil Liberties Union is about to join us. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. This is the place you want to hang out, at the intersection of law and politics, especially when you're dealing with a lawless, rogue Trump administration and Department of Justice. I'm glad you're here. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, first and foremost, to the Legal AFers and the Midas Mighty. Catch us at the midweek with Karen Freeman McNiffalo and me on the Midas Touch Network. And of course, I do about 40 videos a week between Midas Touch and Legal AF at the intersection of law and politics. I'm Michael Popok. Until my next report.